Okay, for the audience watching at home or at work, we should probably get started. Welcome to Is There an App for That? Gamification and online tools for legal knowledge. My name is Eli Edwards. My title at Santa Clara University School of Law is Emerging Technologies Research Librarian, which I usually shorten to Emerging Tech because usually my full title cannot fit on an entire screen when I'm filling it in. This is my first academic legal position. I've been at the position for approximately 2 years. And there's still a lot that I am learning about how to teach, how to reach out to students, methods of instructional design, the way legal apps work within the law school environment as opposed to the law firm environment, which is where I formerly worked, as well as working in the courts briefly. So I am coming at this from a position of newness to this field. So I've been telling people I'm not sure I'll have anything new to say to you today because I assume that you all have been in this space for longer and have more knowledge than I do. So this particular session may be more about questions than answers. That said, I'm going to leave a lot of time for feedback. And if we don't have many questions, we can play with some of the games that I'll be talking about in this presentation. Am I loud enough, by the way? I have an inside voice that is basically like the Metatron from the movie Dogma. And by the way, speaking of old jokes that people of a certain generation will not get for very long, it's Eli as in Wallach, not Ellie. Just to let you know. So why me and why the topic of gamification? I'm interested in how students learn and how lawyers learn. I spent about 5 years at a large law firm in Seattle. I spent nearly 9 months at a very large law firm in their San Francisco office. I worked a lot with new associates, and this was right after law school. I didn't go to law school until I was 35 years old, so I got to see how older students learned the law, and I got to see how very young students learned the law, and generational differences. And one of my motivations is that I took the California bar 3 times and the Washington State bar once. And we're going to talk about that at the end, about how that motivation fits in to what I've learned about learning. And sadly, I'm not alone. I'm from California where bar exam dreams die. And they die hard, and they're dying more and more every year as our pass rate goes through the floor. And it's kind of a frightening thing watching people spend or mortgage themselves 6 figures and then not feel that they're able to pass a test in order to get on with the rest of their lives. So this is just from last month. And while the headline is an exaggeration, nothing else in the article is, including the subtitle, 31.4% of all students in California on the February bar. And this is the breakdown of the pass rates. I consider this kind of frightening myself. And given that I know how smart our students is, how knowledgeable they are, how passionate they are about the law, I want to help fix this by any means necessary. So, one of my frustrations is that we don't really know how people learn most efficiently. And even when we do, as our keynote speaker said yesterday, we're kind of tied to these old traditional ways of instruction and lecture, and just expecting people to sit there and take notes and then memorize those notes and regurgitate them. We can do better, we can do more. We're starting to learn a lot more about brain science. We're learning more about intrinsic and extrinsic motivators, what used to be known as internal hygiene factors, if you've ever taken organizational psychology. But we need to tie that into what we're doing now, I think. And I'm not going to get as sophisticated as yesterday's keynote, because of course he has been studying this for many years, and I've been studying this not so many years. But I do want to talk about what we know works. We know that the growth mindset works. And we also happen to know that law students tend to come in with a fixed mindset because they are good students who've been good students all their lives, and they've been told they're good students because they are obviously smart. Many of them are also hardworking. Some of them may have been told, okay, you're not so smart, but they've managed to overcome that by being hardworking. But most of them coasted through high school, coasted through college with all A's. They get to law school. Some of them are still able to continue coasting. Some of them will get stuck on various things. And when they get stuck, they'll blame themselves or they blame the material. They don't necessarily think of it as a challenge. They think of it simply as an obstacle. The growth mindset, of course, which was developed and popularized by Dr. Carol Dweck, I believe, at Stanford, talks about being able to see competition and obstacles as challenges for growth, not as obstacles against your personal success. It's about not taking setbacks personally and being able to expand your mindset and realize, okay, this is a weak spot. This does not make me a bad or stupid or lazy person. I think that's a message that we should definitely tell our students about and try to get them to do that if they have this problem. And I think some of them definitely do. We know that retrieval practice, the idea that you have to continually test your knowledge, retrieve it from your brain and actually use it. That's how it gets into long-term memory. That's how we learn how to apply it to the real world. It's not a matter of simply reading the same things over and over. Going over your outline 50 times is not as successful as students think it is. And part of the reason why they think it is because everyone tells them, go over your outlines. Fine, yes, do go over your outlines for your weak points, but you need to test those weak points. And that's what retrieval practice does. So quizzes rather than simple review works. Spaced repetition, also called the Leitner method. The idea is that you don't just use the box of flashcards and go over each and every one in order how they came out of the box. What you do is that you figure out, oh, this question was easy to answer. I'll place it over here in this box that I'll only look at every 3 weeks. Meanwhile, this concept I don't quite get, I'll have to look at this every 3 days in order to make sure I get it. That's what spaced repetition is. About recognizing these are the areas where I'm strong, I don't need a lot of review. These are the areas where I'm weak, I do need a lot of review. And it seems that spaced repetition works. And while I don't have a citation in the PowerPoint for it, the interesting thing is I read a little bit of Make It Stick, which is a book about learning styles. The thing about spaced repetition is that it is uncomfortable for students. And I know this because my husband, who is a Silicon Valley programmer, has memory issues. And so he uses a program of digital flashcards called AP, which works on a space repetition model of if he knows it and is able to answer it quickly, it goes to the back of the pack. And the things that he doesn't remember so well go to the front of the pack for the next review. And it's frustrating for him. It takes him hours every day to do this, and it doesn't feel good because you're constantly challenging yourself on the things you don't know. So it's hard to feel good about this type of system, even when it works. They've done studies with students who've done space repetition systems, and they don't feel that they're learning as much because they're constantly being challenged, even when their test scores go up. So it might be useful to promote this, but realize it's going to be a challenge getting people to stick with this system because it doesn't feel good. It doesn't give you that dopamine hit of, yes, I was right, I know this is good. We know that writing notes by hand helps you integrate the information more into your brain than simply transcribing it on a computer. I taught this to my first legal technology class, and they looked at me like I grew two heads simultaneously at once. It was amazing, the look on their faces. But it's true, and I said, it's like, okay, just try it out. And they were like, no, we're not. But it's true, because the thing is, when we're taking notes, we have to start synthesizing information right away because most of us cannot write as fast as someone is speaking. We can often type nearly as fast as someone is speaking. So it just goes in one ear through the fingers onto the page without us processing it. And then there's the Fineman method. Does everyone in the room know who Richard Fineman is? Yeah? World-renowned physicist, worked at the Manhattan Project. I think he did stuff for NASA, amazing guy. I used to live in Pasadena, and the stories that went out about Richard Fineman at Caltech are just amazing. And he came up with a technique for being able to understand things, which is basically, as you can see, pretend you have to teach it to someone completely outside the field, even if they have the level of intelligence of a preteen. If you can do that, if you can do that without jargon, that means you understand the concept really, really well. I doubt most lawyers can do this. And yet, if you can do it for a child, you can certainly do it for a jury, couldn't you? Let's think about that. So now I'm segueing into gamification. You can see the definition on the screen. It's an informal umbrella term for the use of video game elements in non-gaming systems to improve user experience and engagement. Now, I did just a little bit of research, not a huge amount, because I don't have to do formal Blue Book citations for this presentation, thank goodness. But I looked up, technology and legal education in SSRN, which of course has lots of law review papers by law professors. And there's a fair number of papers about things like computers in the classroom and flipped classrooms and online education and the like. When I looked for games in law schools, I got not nearly as many hits, less than 10% of the previous search. And most of those are false positives, where the word games popped up once. Or they were talking about games, but they were talking about games in terms of legal self-help. How to teach pro ses about the law by using a legal type game. Now, one proponent of gamification in law school is Professor Stephanie Kimball of Stanford Law School, where she talks about exactly what gamification means and why people would use gamification strategies. So over the past 10, 15 years, I mean, there's been a lot of literature in the business world about how gamification may enhance certain user behavior. And that's the thing, we're all talking about how to motivate people to do things they might not otherwise want to do, whether that's walking a lot, or whether that's signing into a particular website to log something, whether that is someplace where we'd like to, say, learn something that we need just a little bit of push to do. Why games? Why did I focus on games and why other people are focusing on games? This is from an article advocating use of game development for, again, pro ses and for legal self-help. And their justifications: games are pervasive, they use models and simulations that are based on reality, they're engaging, they have a positive impact, they yield a lot of data that we can then use to improve the process of how people learn about the information that's encapsulated in the game, and they provide a safe environment. Because if you're just playing a game and you lose, well, you know, you get a little bit of a hit, but it's not like you've lost a right, or you've lost an important court battle, or that you are going to get a bad review. It is just a game. It's a good place to practice in. We already have some gamification in the Legal Academy. Lexus Points. And before I left law school, I managed to rack up enough points to win a Nintendo DS, my first one. It was pretty cool. So there's already that happening. And my own bias about looking at games as a potential motivator for gaining legal knowledge is that I'm nearly 50, so I'm Gen X, and I know a lot of gamers. I'm a casual gamer. I know people who have multiple systems. I know people who have an entire shelf of board games that they invite people over to do weekly. I know people who have run D&D campaigns for years, over decades. And so a lot of them are motivated by games. They learn about systems they would not have otherwise known about. It motivates them to be active, it motivates them to be social, it motivates them to leave work, which is a problem in Silicon Valley, especially with all the free food and the massages at work. And Deb is going, what? Wait. And yes, I actually had friends who started a weight loss program by buying Dance Dance Revolution for their PlayStation and getting the pads. And 6 months, they lost 30 pounds, they looked better, they had more energy. It was great from a video game. So I'm not down on video games per se. I started learning French from a little Al, also known as the program Duolingo. My husband is currently reviewing Mandarin and Spanish because he's a polyglot. I also started running, a running program, learning how to run, by running from zombies in my ears, which relates to last night's zombie killing exercise. I was particularly motivated, having run from zombies for so long, to actually have a weapon. That was nice. That was really nice. And so, I mean, I've done other gamification programs, some more general, some in different subjects. These two are my current favorite. And I
What's
use
the
them
zombie
most.
one called? What's the zombie running app called?
There's actually two by the same company. There's Zombies Run and there's Zombies 5K.
Okay.
And so the 5K actually teaches you, if you are a complete couch potato and have never run before, it ramps you up. It's an 8-week program to get you from, yeah, exactly.
That's cool.
And it's fun. There's all these characters that you're listening to in your ears week after week. And I have to admit, I developed a crush on one of them. He has a nice voice. I ship him with the doctor and the name. It's awesome.
That's awesome.
Now, I admit that gamification does have downsides. It is not for everyone. It is not for every student. It can have drawbacks. It can even have a backlash. If you lean too hard into having games in the classroom setting, that might turn off your more introverted students who don't want to do that. It might exacerbate issues regarding competition. And personally, I'm one of the very few who believes there's actually too much competition in law school, that we should actually emphasize cooperation more. But there's that. There has been studies that actually link demotivation of people who are playing games that rely on simply getting points, getting onto the leaderboard, where if you're not that top 5, or if you're not progressing the way you are, you may actually want to do the activity less rather than more. If you think you're always going to be behind the 8 ball, always be at the top, at the lowest point of the scoring, that might actually demotivate you from the activity rather than motivate you. So this is not a be-all, end-all panacea. I think there's room for some gamification. And so what I like about the 3 things that I'm quoting here is that they're all from AA spectrum. So law librarians have been talking about this more than law professors, and I'm grateful to all of you for having open minds and looking into this. Now, let's talk about what's out there right now. I found this, and I was amazed by this. This company, Transmedia, they put out a lot of evidence and discovery-based materials for attorneys. In fact, the law firm I was at, the one thing that the litigators wanted week in, week out was a DVD explaining to witnesses going into depositions about how to handle themselves. They loved that DVD. And unfortunately, they've not done much to migrate it to, say, something that's streaming or something that's available in other ways directly from the internet. You have to have that physical object in order to play it. This apparently was a very popular game at some point, but you notice it's not been updated for a while. I don't plan to use it. I don't have a computer that has Windows 7 or 8 or Vista or XP, and I doubt any students nowadays would. So.
Or even a CD-ROM anymore.
So I don't know, maybe it's worth contacting them and asking, because it seems that could be really useful. There are people who do self-made games. One of the law professor articles that I did found that was rather fascinating. It was very short. This is from a professor who basically created Jeopardy-type games to be done in class using PowerPoint. Just sort of put students in groups, have questions, have them ring in or answer, give them points. again, may not work for every class, may not work for every student in a particular class, but it's different from just having them sit there taking notes to actually test their knowledge. And again, it's PowerPoint, which means it's easy to do. You just incorporate it into the other notes you're doing for your lecture. Unfortunately, I've not heard of any other people doing this. So, and as you can tell, this is from 2009, so it's been 10 years. I don't know whether this really got any traction, but it sounds interesting to me. This is not a game, it is definitely an app. Quizlet is, a digital flashcard system, and it's available for mobile applications, Android and ISO.
It does
Yes.
have a game feature.
Oh, okay,
Yeah, there's 2 games in it.
okay. What do they do?
One is a matching game, and one is like a meteorite falling type thing, and you can type in the answers, and the meteors fall faster and faster.
Oh, no, see, I want that. 'Cause-
Yeah.
they didn't see that. Okay, cool to know. So I will change this before I post this. Similar to Quizlet, we have spaced repetition. I think any of you who have met Professor Gabe Tannenbaum from Suffolk know about spaced repetition. It is not, quote, an app, although you can use the mobile version of the website fairly easily. This is where these screenshots are taken from. You have a dashboard. You have multiple levels of questions that you can use depending on what level you pay for. So there's a version that's, say, $5 a month. There's a version that is about $100 a year. They announced, I think it was March or April, that they are working with Wolters Kluwer. So you can now get manual and crunch time content as digital flashcards in the system. Yes.
I think it's the law and the flash.
Yes, that's what it is, yeah, law and flash. So those box flashcards, law and flash, are now available automatically. I think it's for less than $200 a year. And they are working on getting institutional memberships, subscriptions, so that, entire law schools, their students can access this. And I've played around with it a little. I think it's fairly easy, even though it's not an app. If you notice that you have the question, and when you tap the card to flip it over, it then asks you, how well did you know it? If you knew it very well, what it'll do is put it towards the back, so you won't necessarily see that question for a while. If you didn't know it very well, it gives you a tip to give you context for understanding it. And then you go on, and what they'll do is that they will send reminders for you to look at this every day, but you're given 10 minutes, because they don't want you to stress your brains out on this thing. So you have 10 minutes to go through 10 cards, and then it'll let you know when you're done at the very top. You have your dashboard, and as you go through the cards, you build your mastery. So this is the first time I did this, 0%, because I have no mastery, in part because I'm not studying law, so I was awful at this, and that's okay, because that was just for demonstration purposes. And 2, because I was new. But as I go through the flashcards, and in theory, the things I will know, that 0 will grow. So that's spaced repetition. And I get a daily reminder in my mailbox, which I could turn off, that you should study now, but again, it's only 10 minutes. And they have a range of flashcards. If you sign up under your educational account, you can see flashcards created at other schools. You can also create your own slide deck. So for instance, studies things that aren't covered by bar courses. If you want to study, you can create your own. It's a fairly interesting system, although kind of low on the gamification, but they do make it really easy for just that quick 10 minutes before class while you're waiting, do your flashcards. Boom. We also have Law School Dojo. Who's used Law School Dojo in here? Deb, how'd you come to it?
I heard about it. I like to be hip, so
You already are.
I downloaded it and played it on the train, so everyone was jealous around me.
What version did you play?
Oh, probably an early one.
Okay. Yeah, there was a very early version, I think from, I think 2014 maybe?
Yeah, I think it just said constitutional law.
Right. So this is the most.
And I'm not sure all the Bill of Rights was there actually, so maybe very old.
This is the most recent iteration. It has greatly expanded. It has, in terms of both the content and the gameplay. It is an actual app. It's in both the Apple Store and in Google Play, so you have to download it to your phone or tablet. Right now, only the first module, Know Your Rights, is free. The rest costs, I think, $2.99, but you can get all of them. Yeah, you can get all of them for $6. And some of them, as you can tell from the subjects, evidence law, constitutional law, criminal law, are actually related to law school courses. There are other things in here like Know Your Rights. There is also, I think, a housing, landlord-tenant module that's more for self-help. So this is written not only for law students, but for people who are dealing with legal issues who aren't necessarily lawyers or plan to be lawyers. So I plan to unlock the rest of the modules just to play with. But for Law School Dojo, you start playing. It acts quite a bit like a digital flashcard program, but with additional game elements. So for instance, this last screenshot, as you answer points, as you answer questions and you get them right, you have this maze. And if you notice from the title of Law Dojo, here's your little ninja character. You get 3 of them. So if you answer right, you get 2 additional points. If you answer incorrectly, your little die falls off the map.
Oh dear.
And you're like, I killed it. Oh no. In fact, yesterday I played this with a fundamental rights module, and I lost all 3 lives in that section. And the last question that I lost my life on was, if a government agent came to the library without a warrant and asked for library records, can they get them?
Yep.
And the answer is yes, at least under federal common law. Now, there are various state carve-outs and exceptions in library policy because we are a very defiant profession, are we not? But under federal common law, that's not a protected class of information that would otherwise fall under reasonable expectations of privacy under the Fourth Amendment.
I would have figured it would fall under the Patriot Act.
Well, see, the Patriot Act, you should not have asked this. I actually did a master's thesis on the Patriot Act and libraries. Patriot Act, the information particularly in the Patriot Act, PIN registers and internet sign-in sheets. Most of the statutory carve-outs for library information directly address circulation records. So computer information, the type of metadata that they get from the PIN registries or from the internet sign-in sheets, not covered usually under the statutory carve-outs that a lot of local and federal governments have done for library records. And if they are, they were done after the Patriot Act, after people realized, oh wait, there's all this information we still don't want to give the government. At least in a lot of library systems, this is still an open issue, particularly if you go to ALA. Here's some more screenshots of the gameplay. You see, it's very colorful, very easy to understand. I couldn't quite capture exactly when a figure was falling off my screen when I got a wrong answer. The thing I like about Law Dojo is that you can review the questions you got right and got wrong. It gives you your stats in the game. You can play again if you want. You can also use the points you've accumulated to start another session immediately or buy another life. If you just want to continue through that module, power through that module. And then I want to come to Learn Hands, which is actually talked about in the AI session earlier. Hi, guys. So Law Dojo comes out of the Stanford Legal Design Lab that was started by Margaret Hagan, who was a graphic designer who then went to law school and decided she wanted to apply design skills to legal problem solving. And she is also involved in the Learn Hands project, which also involves Suffolk University. Again, Gabriel Tenenbaum's fingers are in this particular project. So what this does is that this takes legal queries from Reddit. I think it's particularly the legal advice subreddit. And they put them in, because people are actually asking about real legal situations. And the idea is to train this data via machine learning to have a system where as those queries are coming in the future, a machine can automatically target what type of legal help this might actually need. So rather than people asking a bunch of lawyers, what should I do when my landlord threatens to kick me out, or my parents refuse to do such and such, etc., it'll instantly go into the system and say, oh, you're having a housing issue. Here's the legal help information for your state or for your municipality. Or here's the referral to a bunch of attorneys that you can do. Or here are the legal forms that you may need. So this is part of a training system. It's not specifically to educate people. So while this is a very interesting game, it doesn't necessarily tell you, is your answer right, is your answer wrong? And it doesn't explain why. It simply awards you points for participating in this. In fact, you can even get pro bono credit in certain states for participating in this. I think this is an interesting exercise for law students to do, in part because it's taking real queries where people are putting in extraneous information and using problematic language and getting the legal issues all tangled up. But it's a way to do that issue spotting in something that is less fraught than an exam. And if it turns out they're wrong, it gets thrown out because this is based on a consensus system where if you have 100 attorneys, 5 of them say, no, there's no legal issue, the machine listens to the other 95%. So it's fairly low stakes for the people who are using the system. That said, it doesn't give a lot of feedback. But it's fun. And there is a leaderboard, as well as a profile. As of 2 days ago, I was number 8. My big question is that if we go in this direction, how do we test what works versus what's out there? I love that TV guide. It slightly predates me, so I never saw this live, but I love that TV guide cover. The goal I'd like in the future, which unfortunately I'm not sure I'll be able to do anytime soon. It's a little bit too ambitious for me. But I think that law librarianship in embracing data-driven law and data-driven legal librarianship, at least us in the academy, need to include data-driven assessments of learning materials. There's so much out there. I mean, in California alone, because of our bar exam system, we have over a dozen bar exam programs. How do we know which ones are right? How do we help our students choose the right one, given that these things cost thousands of dollars on top of the tens and hundreds of thousands of dollars they're already spending to start their legal career? I think we need to start testing, we need to start assessing these products, we need to start giving recommendations, we need to engage. And I have that timer to let me know that 40 minutes have passed, so I can now accelerate, so there'll be plenty of time for questions.
Speed round.
So this is my eventual goal. But for now, I think we need to talk about gamification more. I think we need to share what we know, share what we've experienced. We need to collect anecdotes. We need to talk to our students about what they're doing and what seems to work for them, and note the kind of student that it works for. There are some students, for instance, at my school that love Cali, and some that love Quimby. Quimby. I was thinking, no, it's not the mayor of Simpsons, it's no. We need to talk about this, and we need to figure out if there a way to correlate what type of systems, what type of product, what type of techniques work for different types of students. We can't just throw the kitchen sink at them and let them shift for themselves. I don't think that's responsible, and I think we can do better. And I think starting in this gamification sphere, particularly with legal knowledge, is a good place to start. So for instance, someone could, for instance, start writing reviews of these games. I mean, it could be me, but I'm not sure I'm going to get to it. So if you want to send me, feel free. I'll only be this much agreed. Better if the information gets out there. So why reopen this conversation? Again, we need to figure out what has already been covered, whether or not there's any new materials that we should keep in mind. What does current brain science say? Whether or not we can do things better, whether or not we can encourage more products. I mean, yeah, so you have law and flash and spaced repetition. What if we could also get other Aspen materials in there? What if we could get Gilbert's in there? This should be an expanding marketplace, I think. And the way to get it to expand is to demand for that expansion on behalf of our students. So I want to end. None of these products can or should, let alone will, replace outlining or practice essays or traditional review, but I think it's a good supplement. 10 minutes a day to go over note cards, or 15 minutes to play a game between classes. It's that retrieval practice that seems very low stakes, but it adds to the knowledge. It recontextualizes what they're learning and puts it into a little bit of practice that doesn't challenge them too much and causes them to shut down. Going back to the bar exam, I eventually passed. How did I eventually pass, given that most people are like, you didn't pass the second time. What's wrong with you? So for me, and this is the way I feel, I cheated. Because I did the Barbary program twice, I had all these books, I had all these cards, and there was a point where I'm sitting there in the cafe, knowing that I need to be writing. And I can't put a word on the page. I just can't. I am paralyzed. So I decided I'm going to look at the model answer. And I did. It's like, that's a good model answer. I'm going to copy this down. Okay. Get to the second question. Still paralyzed. I start doing an outline. I just sort of like, I'm just going to look at the model answer. Oh, that's a good model answer. I'm going to copy this down. I ended up doing all of the model answers that way. I would do an internal outline of the issues. and just copy down the model answer. And then if there was something that I missed in terms of an issue, that's when I went back to my outlines and back to my flashcards. And as it turns out, I was reverse engineering how to write a good answer for the California bar, coming at it from the reverse. I learned by looking and writing the model answer, by doing muscle memory of when I see these particular words in a question, I should write this sentence. And for something like the bar exam, which doesn't much resemble how actual law is practiced, maybe that's okay for some students to do. If it gets more people to pass, and they are otherwise stellar attorneys, I mean, if they were able to pass law school, why wouldn't they all have the legal knowledge? I mean, this only works if the problem is writing. If your problem is issue spotting, there are other issues and other ways to get around that. But if people are being stopped simply because they're not sure how to write the model bar exam essay, we should find other ways to help them write the model bar exam essay. The same way, if people are having problems with traditional issue spotting, maybe issue spotting in games is the other way to get around that and deal with that. So in terms of my current gamification efforts, French, to be honest. But in terms of running,
Good job.
2015,
Oh.
this is me at the very bottom. I was literally the last person on the track because that had happened where they had all the runners gather before going into, and the race was at a baseball stadium for the Seattle Mariners. So it happens there was a line of sycamore trees, which is the tree I am most allergic to. So 2 minutes into the race, I expected to go slow. I did not expect my entire chest to seize up in pain. But I ran as much as I could and I walked the rest. And they're literally the people who are staffing and volunteering at the race, they're falling in behind me because they know, oh, the race is over. But I finished and I got a medal.
Good job.
And I did others in Seattle. I don't have my times. I was not the absolute last, and I see people going, beat the, what the, huh? All I have to say is the oatmeal is a brilliant web cartoonist and an even brilliant more web race organizer. And if you look at this particular type of race, yes, there is cake at the watering stations. I did not have any. But there is also chocolate milk at the end, and I did have some. And for the turkey trot, costumes. Dogs dressed up as turkeys. It doesn't get much better than that. My last thought, to sum up, gaming isn't the answer for all students, but it is perhaps an answer for some students, so why not pursue it? Questions, comments, feedback, shade, tea, educate me.
Could
Yes.
you take one of those quiz programs and like put it on a touch screen just somewhere in the library that people could, or does it have to be tied to one individual person and account?
I think most of them have to be tied to an individual account, although
Just wondering if
if
it'd be
it's
fun for someone to just walk
if there's an
by.
institutional membership, I mean, in theory, a faculty or a staff person could use their account
Yeah,
to have
just
that
as like
display.
a little like sample that might get them thinking, oh, this is cool, I want this on my phone now, like,
Right,
you know.
and I think that would be a great way to put it.
The Quizlet you can put on a smart board, and it does increase students' buy-in.
That'd be cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
I was thinking that would be a great example of the lightning talk ambush thing that we had here yesterday, because we have a couple of older iPads in the library that they're not fast enough to do much of anything, but if we can get any of these things to run, having those at a table with something on the screen would probably be good enough.
Okay.
If you have older devices that somebody could donate for that purpose. I mean, it depends on whether they have a, like, they can run the operating system that these run on, but it'd be worth a try.
Okay, yes.
We, the advanced legal research teacher does a final class as a review and does a quote-unquote Jeopardy style type game. It actually takes elements from a lot of games. And basically what it is it's a PowerPoint and they select a category and you touch, the touch screen and it jumps to the correct slide for that category.
Oh, cool.
And there's a way to jump back at the end. So I'm the person, of course, standing, pressing the touch screen. We jokingly call me Budget Vanna White. But, so it's really not that hard to do with just PowerPoint if you want to make your own questions and just jump the slide, jump back to center, main slide.
Yes.
So this isn't a legal game, but we happened to put out a puzzle in our library right before exams started. And it's been such a huge hit for people just to walk by and kind of do something a little bit different with their brain.
Like a huge hit.
Like, we had no idea, like,
Is this like a jigsaw?
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
It was one of our staff members, we were trying to figure out something that was interactive, and she goes, hey, what about a puzzle? I've got one, and she brought it in from home, and I don't even know how many we've gone through now, and they're 1,000 to 3,000 pieces. I mean,
It
they're-
draws
they're
people to
big.
the circ desk like a magnet.
And it's amazing to watch, not only people come together and work together, but the conversations that happen. Some of them are, study-related questions, and some of them are, I'm stressed out about exams when we were in exams, and some are just, hey, I've seen you, but we're not in the same section. My name is, whatever. I've just kind of been blown away of watching, like, what's happened with simply throwing a puzzle out in a public area for people to work on together.
Okay. Yes.
We do similar things with puzzles. We actually have, believe it or not, around finals time, a Westlaw putting green that
Oh,
we
that's
put out.
cool, yeah.
They tried, the first time they did it, they tried making a course through the whole library, but it got to be too disruptive. So we just have the one out now.
But I appreciate the effort.
Yeah. We also have coloring pages,
Yep,
believe it or not,
yep.
with colored pencils out in people, just to, help give them a break and to help them.
Sometimes us as a staff get together and color pages, just same thing.
You mentioned that your husband uses Anki, but you didn't mention it as a choice for flashcards it's another space repetition.
It is another spaced repetition, although the problem is you have to program everything in yourself.
Well, no, you can buy some existing.
Okay.
I don't particularly like it, but there's an evidence one, for example.
Okay, that's good
But
to
you
know.
also can build your own flashcard.
Yes, it's very good for building your own custom, which he largely does. So, although I've not seen that marketed especially to law students, so good to know. Any other questions?
I have one.
Yes.
Do you know any good resources online that it kind of like just they tell you how they're using gamification? Because a lot of this stuff I guess gamification can be used with pretty much any app. Like your example with PowerPoint, any software, any app can be used in a gamified way. But it's just figuring out how to do that.
Right.
Do you know anybody who has like a good blog or something like that that shows examples of what they're doing that can kind of give you ideas?
Not exactly for gameplay, although I think Northwestern, their legal lab is doing some game design, and there's a lot of design and visual information about how to display the law coming from Stanford, their legal design lab, usually run by Margaret Hagan.
I just wanted to plug my friend's book. It's called Game It Up, Using Gamification to Incentivize Your Library. A little off topic, but might have some concepts. It's a small little book.
Okay, yeah. So, and I think games have been talked about a lot in terms of public libraries, so there might be public library resources around, say, like maker spaces, or making things more mobile and digital and interactive that might have those elements. I've not seen anything specifically for the law school space outside of the legal design lab at Stanford.
Deb's got a question.
Deb.
Hi, Eli. Can I put in a plug for Callie's 2 coloring books?
Yes.
Because you can, thank you. So Callie has 2 coloring books. You can download the pages from the website for free. One of the books is a legal research guide, not intended to replace any existing legal research course book, but reviews the concepts of it. It's a great book, but it's not 100% inclusive. And the second one has a variety of 1L course subjects illustrated in nice drawings, but the outline of the drawings you get to color in. And you can then, gamify it by having contests for the same drawing, and all sorts of things, and really decorate your dean's office. Just a rough idea. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. And yes, I'm one of those people who actually bought the Law and Order coloring book. So, although I was too afraid to actually color in it, because it's like, I can't mess up Lenny Briscoe. No. We still have 5 minutes. Any other questions?
That Reddit, I can't remember the name of it, but the one that's using sourcing Reddit for
Right.
Learn at hands.
Is that is it the goal to teach this and to actually, are we contributing to the development of some bot that is then in turn answering these questions on Reddit?
Yes.
Okay, that's very interesting.
Yeah. So it's out of Stanford and Suffolk. Yes.
Yes, and to that question, what they did is they originally had this massive sort of collection of, really messy interactions. People just asking legal questions in plain English. And they've been working with the folks from Reddit. They've been working initially with Microsoft, thinking about how could we use this to sort of do natural language processing and understanding of it. And then the Stanford overlay is then trying to do something where it's then categorizing them and sort of mapping them to a taxonomy that helps sort of develop sort of more of an understanding of sort of how do you think about what is a legal question and what subjects are they in.
Emily, I think you.
There's also an RBG printable thing that I've seen some of our women in law students use when they're trying to get people to stick around at their bake sale table or something like that. So even with things like the pop-up sessions, having something like that, that's a different way of doing it, might get students to kind of hang around.
I think it's fun.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think we're largely done. I mean, I don't remember if we're going into lunch right now.
Can you show us one of your games on the Apple TV or something?
I have it right here.
Awesome.
So for instance, this is Learn at Hands. And I figure if you want, we can pick a module and start answering questions. I can also show off spaced repetition. Today's cards are ready. Warn you, I will second this because I don't actually study law anymore. But if anyone wants to play, feel free to stay or go ahead to your break, see what new snacks are downstairs, and lunch is ready. Thank you so very much.
I look forward to your cheating on the bar, reverse engineering the bar presentation next year.
Yeah, that was a cool idea. Yeah, yeah.
Sorry?
There you go, exactly.
Come on, Ken. Well, they do make lunch.
You download whatever the sentence is, right? Yeah, there it is.
Yeah, so is this just one?
So I started doing
Right.
So a lot of my, a lot of my problems were not substantive.
Right.
And so I got two of them.
Yes.
I'm so taught of were probably missing some of these. Things that I must be doing.